So, yeah, I want to start with this past week because even before Nicole's eviction, there was a lot of talk from you about how they're losers, they're clowns, you're calling them bozos on the way out. There's a lot of talk about like these people don't know how to play the game, they're all sheep. You can't all share $750,000. Even with your interview with Julie, you said you were teaching people how to play the game. Now that you're starting to look back and find out more about what the dynamics were like in the house at the time, how do you look back on those assessments?
Uh, at the time, I definitely felt like I was teaching people how to play the game, but I am aware that there's a new school way of playing, old school way of playing. I try to toe the line of both because I'm such a huge fan of the show, strategically and socially. But yeah, I mean, I respect that the leftovers were created, and they obviously are playing the game. It's just not necessarily to my liking as far as strategy, obviously because it didn't benefit me without even knowing that they existed at the time. Because I was aligned with Alyssa and Indy in some way, I was hoping that not only that it would benefit my game because I aligned with them, but that they had a more strategic approach, and maybe they do. I look forward to like watching it back to see where they really are coming from outside of the leftovers, even though Indy wasn't involved with that at all. But yeah, so they obviously are playing the game. I'm outside the house; they're in there. It just wasn't my style, so I felt like I was teaching them my way, which is not the way to play the game.
So, obviously, we want to talk about Taylor, but I want to rewind to the beginning when you were first HOH. So, you end up backdooring Taylor during your HOH reign. You go so far as to even say, the moment I saw her, I knew she was bad news. And I know you also reference moments like Taylor calling Jasmine fat, which, for the record, did not actually happen, but you use it as ammunition to nominate her. What specifically was Taylor saying or doing in the house that made you feel like she was personally trouble for you and your game?
Oh well, first the bad news comment was that I saw myself in her, a badass who would absolutely kill this game. And not that I'm saying I'm a badass, but I see myself, my personality in her. I was aware that if I went after her, she's going to come after me. I actually wanted to align with her that first week until the Paloma thing happened. And with my once I had to make a replacement, everyone but Nicole wanted Taylor out, or at least was okay with it and had something to say about it. They all had their experiences with her. Mine necessarily weren't negative at the time. And once the Paloma thing happened, that's when I got emotional about it. And once Monty, who I trusted, really doubled down on the fact that she needs to go up on the block, she needs to go. That's when I was like, all right, I think this has to happen, especially if the house is telling me. Outside of Nicole was the only one that was like, I have no problem and I actually like her. And but I felt it was the best move for first HOH is what the house wanted. As much as I hate that term and how much I hate people using that as a ploy throughout the season, for the first HOH, it's very hard to nominate someone when you are just meeting them. But yeah, it was a rough first week, absolutely.
So I'm not sure if you know this yet, but not only was Paloma actually spinning a false narrative about Taylor to get her targeted, because she actually was indeed going after the guys, but she was actually wanting to go after you next week. She talked about how she felt you were emotional and unreliable with some of the ways you were acting in the house. How do you feel about that, especially knowing you invoked her name so many times throughout your time in the house?
I just heard that on the last interview. It sucks on a personal level, but I respect all gameplay. And I only knew her for a week. So I understand that. And I'm a tall male, whatever you want to call it, a threat or whatever you want. So I respect it. Like they made a girls alliance and I'm a guy. So it makes sense.
So that move ends up leading to some very, very personal comments that you've made against Taylor throughout your time in the game, even up to the days leading towards your eviction. You've been saying things like Taylor was stalking you. She's not a good person. She, quote, doesn't deserve to live normal. And even just a few days ago, I know you and Terrence were mocking that Taylor could have only won Miss Michigan if Michigan was a restaurant. In retrospect, how do you look back on the way you consistently treated Taylor and talked about her in the game?
Yeah, something like live normal. I can tell you right now that I'm not that it's justified, but I'm speaking of the Big Brother world, not in the outside world. That's not who I am. But things like that do matter to me. I look forward to watching back feeds, watching back the show as soon as possible, just to be aware of how it's portrayed or how it's received, how I was acting, and I look forward to correcting my wrongs. Mostly, obviously, with Taylor and anyone I may have offended in the house, because that's most important. That's my priority. But of course, in the outside world, people were offended. I will absolutely approach that as well. I just want to make sure I watch it back and I'm aware of what I'm apologizing for instead of just saying it out loud, you know.
So let's get into the personal attack you make on Taylor back during week 3. So you mistakenly believe that Taylor was trying to get Nicole to leave when really she was actually in the next room while you and Nicole were talking, praying with Monty for her mother's health. So when Nicole spoke to me, she said that she did not expressly tell you to go after Taylor on her behalf. So what made you decide to do that and be so forward and aggressive to the point where you were accusing her of being the one behind Paloma leaving the house, which ends up leaving her in tears?
When I give my loyalty to someone, even in the real world, I trust them 100%. So they just have to say one word to me, I'm going to believe it. So that may be my flaw in the real world. And of course, in Big Brother, with Nicole, once she had explained to me that essentially Taylor said, you can quit the game, it really set me off, obviously on the emotional level, because Nicole was my number one and now my best friend in real life. But looking back, it was more also the trigger of feeling like, from what I was told and what I felt inside the house, I'm learning different now. But at the time, it was a trigger of what had already happened with Paloma, my other close ally in the house, at least what I thought was. So it was having that second trigger was like, oh, this is like a thing that Taylor's doing. And it was affecting me on an emotional level and a game level because these are allies as well. And there's definitely a better way to go about it. But at the time, the emotions got the best of me.
From my perspective, it seemed like you did often react to information that other house guests were bringing to you. So in that instance, it was Nicole's misread of Taylor, that she was trying to get her to leave. I mentioned before about Jasmine saying that Taylor called her fat, which again was not the case at all. So I want to bring this up because it seems like when you have this conflict with Monty after Nicole's eviction, it seems a bit different from the way that you approach Taylor. There, you really opened up the conversation for Monty to be able to respond to the arguments that you were making. With Taylor, you were literally telling her, do not talk to me. You weren't even letting her give you a response without outburst. Why were the nature of those two talks so different?
What I tried to do was learn from my current mistakes in the house. So approaching Monty was I was trying to do the opposite of what I did because I learned the next day after the Taylor blow up that I had done something wrong and I didn't feel okay with it. So moving forward, I was like, if I have to confront anyone, I need to approach this differently. And Monty's was a whole different situation as opposed to like, I want to let the house know he's lying in front of me right now, which he lied to me and Jasmine. He told us different stories. At least that's what I was told in the house. But yes, ultimately it was the approach of I'm not going to blow up again. I learned from my mistake. And here's another way I could possibly go about this. Unfortunately, I wish I could reverse that, if you will, obviously back to when the Taylor situation happened.
So Julie let you know last night that the blow up on Taylor was one of the reasons that the leftovers ended up being formed. And we saw your face fall last night when you ended up hearing that. I can also tell you that Alyssa ended up telling Kyle about your old school alliance, which was another reason why everything came together the way that it did. How do you look back on everything, knowing that what you did specifically is one of the reasons why this majority ended up coming together?
Leftovers forming because of what I did or how I blew up. I respect on a personal level and a game level. I think it's great to see an underdog situation of these 7 come together because of something negative that happened in the house or to someone that they care about. So as a fan, I love that. I respect it. And on a personal level, it makes sense. I had no idea Alyssa revealed old school, but old school, you know, it was more of a, when you form alliances in the house, you don't really have meetings. It's like, hey, we're working together, right? All right, let's just move forward, opposed to like having a meeting with old school. But it makes sense, you know, that's, she probably felt it was best for her game to reveal that to Kyle, her showmance. But as far as I'm aware, I think she's not in the leftovers, and I try to give her that information. So hopefully she'll learn from that. Hopefully she'll get further in the game because of the information I gave her.
All right. So, last thing I want to do is I want to do a bit of an exercise with you. I am going to go through the remaining house guests in the game, and I want you to give me a word or a few words that first comes to mind for you when it comes
Okay.
to describing them. And
Okay.
let's start with the aforementioned Alyssa.
Oh, head in the clouds with head over heels with Kyle. Wait, you said one word.
No, no, do
Distracted.
as many as you want to. You know, sky's the limit here.
Alyssa, distracted.
How about Brittany?
Misinformation.
How about Indy?
Oh my gosh, entertaining.
Jasmine?
Oh, just I love her.
How about Joseph?
A brother. After the house, I cannot wait to reconnect with him.
Your festy bestie, Kyle?
Genius.
I know you had a lot of words for this guy the past week. Michael?
Oh, ultimate Big Brother player. Best I've seen in a long time.
Monty?
Genuine and loving.
Taylor?
Top final 3 of this season.
Wow. Okay, that's a big, jump from her nearly being the first boot.
Yeah, well, when someone, as a gameplay, removing the emotional outburst stuff, when someone survives a block 3 times in a row, those people often survive very long in the game. But what she's doing and how she's aligning herself, and even with Monty realigning himself with her, they're playing such a smart game, and I do think Taylor will be in the top 3.
All right, just to finish out the game with a couple more names. Terrence?
Oh, my boy.
And finally, Turner?
Whimsy. Whimsical, I don't know.